All right, welcome to another SM News. We're coming to you live from the Silicon Slopes up here in beautiful sunny Utah. You got Heff on the microphone.
And I'm Forrest.
And you got Forrest, yes. And we're going to talk about our top stories. Microsoft Exchange Server 0 days. We're talking about this SEO Cyberattack, which we're calling the WandaVision attack. Yeah, we got to talk about LastPass and all these password manager trackers. And of course, is Amazon Alexa safe to use? So DJ, let's get this party started right. All right, Forrest, you know, when they pick up these news stories on the mainstream news channels like Fox and CNN and NBC, that's how you know the story's a big story and it's important to talk about. So Exchange Server, I don't know about you, but I got a ton of emails from different threat vendors.
Oh yeah.
That I subscribe to, just telling me about this Exchange Server, and boy, this thing's lighting up the web.
Yeah, it's funny you say when you see this stuff on the news, I'm more concerned when I'm seeing stuff from like ISAC. That's when I'm like, oh, this is real. This is serious. Okay.
I better pay attention to it. But
yeah.
You know, the story goes, security reacher Volexity, what they did is they first spotted the attacks in January, but what we found out was this is the on-prem version of Exchange that it impacts. And with this exploit, you don't really have to have any special skills or knowledge. You basically just show up. I'd like to break in. I want to read your email. There we go. I'm in, Forrest.
Yeah. It seemed like the bar was pretty low for exploitation as far as technical ability. I mean, it's server-side request forgery, and I think you needed to know the email address of your target. So that's not a whole lot, not a very high bar as far as exploits go. So this is pretty scary stuff. It seemed like the rest of the exploits were pretty much dependent on that SSRF for the initial stage, and then further exploitation from there. So yeah, once again, just demonstrating chaining together vulnerabilities is super effective.
Yeah, and these are 4 exchange flaws, and the danger is we don't know who's behind it. We have some attribution, and the security researchers are basically saying that it was some unknown Chinese espionage group called Hafnium. We have heard of these folks before, though, so I don't know where they're getting the word unknown from, Forrest.
It was interesting that Microsoft seemed, pretty confident in throwing that out initially, as opposed to, when things were first starting to trickle out, like with SolarWinds. There was a little bit of hesitance to do any kind of attribution, especially from FireEye, but then. Yeah, this is just right out and out the gate. It was these dudes, and it's like, okay, all right.
We got it. We got them. But, Hafnium, Forrest, if you recall, they go after a lot of hosting companies, and not just the hosting companies, but they target a lot of specific sectors, and a lot of it's, the defense contractors, the government think tanks, some higher education stuff. So, I mean, they're known players in the market, but it's good to finally see this stuff, especially when you talk about Patch Tuesday. Patch Tuesday comes out, and it's like, boom, we've got this huge breaking story about these flaws. Lessons learned. There's absolutely a lot going on here to package and unpackage, but just be aware that there are patches available right now, and you can apply them in your environment. So if you're an enterprise customer, this is definitely on your radar to get patched pretty quickly.
Yeah, most definitely. My heart goes out to all the Exchange admins out there, as if it wasn't difficult enough being an Exchange admin. Now you've got this added on top as well. The thing that's really sticking out to me about this that's particularly scary is this had been actively exploited since around January 6th. So
yes.
we're like 2 months out of active exploitation. So this isn't a 0 day. This is a negative 2 month day. Like it's been rough stuff going on. So I really feel bad for any organization that's been impacted by this. It just goes to show that it's you really need to have those layers, that defense in depth. So operating from the mindset that something already is compromised and you just need to be looking for it, because sometimes it is the case. You may have active exfiltration happening right under your nose and not even be aware of it. So that's sometimes how these things come out is somebody's being real observant and seeing, oh, hey, we're shifting 5 gigs of data off to this random server somewhere. Like, what is that? So,
And that's the thing, man.
scary.
I mean, January. I mean, this thing's been going on since January. Imagine how much data they were able to potentially exfiltrate. That's a huge window of time to not be aware of it in your environment. So thankfully it's now been notified and it's on everyone's radar. And when it's on the big news, right? If it leads and bleeds is the big news stories. So, but I'm glad we could talk about this because, man, this is such a heartbreaker to see this happen. All right, let's move on gears. Let's move our gears for a moment. We've got to talk about this combination leak. This came out about a week or so ago. And it's nothing new, Forrest. I mean, these combination leaks happen all the time. What's unique about it, though, is there's about 3.2 billion credentials that were in this compilation, and it's a compilation, right? So, Forrest, we're talking breaches from 2016 up to 2019 being sold on the dark web for a very steep discount. I mean, these things are older, 2016 stuff, 2019 breaches. So you can get on the dark web, you can buy these emails for like $2. That's a bargain price.
Yeah. It was kind of funny. When this first came out, I was particularly paranoid about the site that had exposed it and put out the checking tool to see if you're part of the exposure. I immediately went to the privacy policy, and they specifically cited other tools on their website, but they didn't mention this personal data leak checker tool. And I think in my rush to try and make sure that nothing bad was going to happen, I completely missed on the page that it says that they don't collect or store the email addresses that you submit there. So I was going for the legalese approach, whereas it's just right there and very first page where you go to submit it. So it's pretty funny. There's I would say about half of my Gmail accounts were listed on there. The other half weren't, and those were like my throwaway spam accounts. And then there was an old Hotmail account that I haven't used in like 15 years. Like that was in there. So whatever they're sourcing these leaks from, it's some pretty old information, at least in some regards.
Yeah, and that's a lesson learned for us. You're right. We should step back for a moment and tell the audience that there is a data leak checker. So you can check your emails based upon the data breach from 2016 through 2019. And because it's a combination of all these other credentials and all these other breaches all wrapped into one, you can, you can really check your stuff and put your email address in, hit the check now button, and it'll tell you whether or not your stuff is involved in the breach. Now, there's some good stuff on here. It really, and I say good stuff, I mean, it only impacts like Google. I mean, it impacts Google, Yahoo, Hotmail, but primarily it impacts the Google emails and the Yahoo stuff. So the Gmail stuff. So again, we'll include the link and you can put your stuff in there and take a look, but it's a unique stuff. I mean, to see these combination breaches, what they're counting on, Forrest, and this is for everyone in the audience to understand, is they're counting on these prices are so low on the dark web to buy these emails, and because they're so low, because they're so old, and they're counting on that you probably have already changed your email address, and we know that most people don't, right, Forrest? Like so many people forget to do that, so. It's an older breach. If you've not already changed your email or password, you need to do that right now. Your email password, excuse me. And you can check it in the link. So we'll include that for you as well.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying on the existence of the tool and the ability to check on that. I kind of just dived right in there. So, it's so with these leaks, it's hard because there's not really any indication of the origin of it, where it originated, what the where the credentials were harvested from. So it's it's a little cumbersome in that regard. But I think the bigger issue at large is, that so much is tied to knowing an email address,
Yes.
and it's hard to have any kind of um, uh, isolation across services in that regard. There's some things that you can try to do, like the RFC for email addresses actually allows you to use, like, say my email is Forrest at SecurityMetrics News, right? I could do Forrest plus and then whatever I wanted, and try and have some differentiation that way, so that most of the time, a lot of you know. Programmers don't really account for that sort of thing. So if I were signing up for multiple accounts, I could have Forrest Netflix at Security Metrics News, or Forrest Hulu at Security Metrics News. And that way you have at least some delineation. If suddenly one of those starts getting spammed, it's like, oh, well, this is who leaked my email. But I mean, even then, that's attackers can strip that info and just get back to the base. Or another approach could be having like a catch-all address.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
have
Right.
I have my own domain that the MX records point to my email provider, and that way I have a catch-all email, so I can just do Netflix at my domain or Hulu at my domain, and away it goes. And the one, I mean, that's gonna be, I think that's gonna account for the vast majority of these kind of breaches. It'll make it a lot easier to see what exactly got hit. But even then, that's once, if somebody were to take the time to go through and see, oh, all they're doing is just service name at domain, I can just send whatever I want to that domain and it's going to get through. So there's a lot of stuff is tied to email address, is just like your this is my online identity. And so I think there's a greater need for things like the sign in with Apple, where there's that layer of abstraction, where all the service provider gets is this alias that they can send to, and then on the back end, whatever service, whether that's Apple or Firefox Relay is another one, where there's kind of that anonymization where all they get is just this random, essentially a token that they can send email to.
It would definitely help, because the bad guys in this combination breach is they're relying on the fact that people don't change their passwords. They're also relying on the fact that you probably use the same password at home that you do at work. And then they're also thinking, well, if you've not changed your password and you're using the same password on Hulu, on Netflix, on all these other services, that they have a good chance at getting some good return for their investment of having all these leaked emails. So let's pivot off this for a moment. And Forrest, I love talking about password managers. I have severe trust issues with password managers, and this month confirmed. I mean, it absolutely confirmed that fear that I have of password managers not being safe. I'm sure you've heard about this LastPass thing. They've been in the news like crazy this month. I mean, every story you talk about, it's the movie Rocky, dude. It's the movie Rocky for LastPass. You just 1-2 punch, boom, 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 getting knocked down again.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's they're definitely taking a beating. So I mean, the two big stories with LastPass, one was they are changing their pricing modeling, their licensing. And then two is the trackers that were observed in the app. So
Let's start with the free tier. Becoming a lot less useful. So I think if you're not aware of LastPass and you're not aware of password managers like them, what LastPass is trying to do is they're trying to become a little bit more profitable. And on March 16th, they're going to start severely limiting their functionality. And if you're one of those people that uses LastPass, you need to be aware of it, because if you're using the free version of it, and right now you can store an unlimited number of passwords across all your devices without limitation, but March 16th, what changes is you have to pick. You've got to pick one category of devices to view and manage your passwords. You either pick mobile or computer, unless you want to pay for the service. So that's a huge change for people that may not be, they're always used to getting stuff for free for it. And now LastPass not making it happen.
Yeah, it's there's definitely been a big shift in expectations as far as software goes. A lot of people just they just want what they want and expect it to just work and have their cake and eat it too.
Right, right.
It's development does cost money, especially when it comes to companies, bigger companies, organizations. They have costs. It's a business. So obviously that money's got to come from somewhere. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to to balance that really, and I feel bad for LastPass because it's a fine line that you need to walk, and I'm sure a bunch of people are going to be uh, setting sail away from them and finding greener pastures, but it's at the same time they've got to keep things going. So it's
Yeah.
just it's tough.
We spent some time this week trying to help our employees get rid of some of these password managers and migrate off of them. Again, Forrest, the trust issues I have never trusted LastPass. And I know that sounds horrible to say that because there's a lot of good people I'm sure that work there. But then when this security researcher came out and they said, "Hey, I found 7 trackers in LastPass," but the irony of the whole situation is some of these trackers are actually good trackers. I mean, they're meant for security, they're meant for privacy. They don't act, but the problem for us is if you're not informing your customers about these trackers, that's where you get into dangerous territory.
Yeah. So LastPass in particular had 7 trackers, I think. 4 of those were Google. Google
Right.
Analytics. They were, the crash reporting. Some of the stuff that you generally want in an application to try and hunt down bugs and improve the user experience overall. I do think that yeah, being more transparent with it is a good measure to take. I think also, not necessarily being dependent on Google to provide all that functionality is pretty big deal. A lot of places just put in Google Analytics and set and forget kind of thing. I think that there's a need for a lot more competition in that space. There's definitely open source alternatives to Google Analytics. Things like Matomo, Open Web Analytics, AW Stats, things like that. That I think could probably help stimulate some competition and maybe break up that massive data silo. Because you talk about not trusting password managers. I am my distrust for Google has been growing year over year, and so I'm gradually just trying to pull out as much data as I can from that ecosystem. Slowly siphoning things off. So yeah, it's if I can hop on my soapbox here for a moment, I think that the answer here should be open source software. Um,
Wow.
you
Wow.
know,
You're going down that road, aren't you?
I am.
Man.
You own your data. At that point, your data can't be harvested if it never leaves your box, right? So, I personally for password management, I use open source software, and I just synchronize my password database across devices using my own file synchronization. So everything's open source. It's I've got my own backups that I keep off site. Naturally, a lot of people don't want to deal with that overhead. So there's a lot of companies that are starting to leverage open source models that are underpinning the service. So they provide that extra layer of, okay, we'll synchronize, we'll do your backups, all that sort of stuff, but the underlying
Yeah.
software itself is open source. So I think that's a kind of a nice meet in the middle. But password managers are definitely important. I wouldn't let this scare you away from using them. I definitely recommend having those randomly generated passwords is going to be a lot better practice than just reusing credentials or what have you.
So we should mention too that LastPass, with this security reach, you're saying there's 7 trackers in LastPass. There's also trackers in Bitwarden, which has 2. RoboForm and Dashlane both have 4 trackers apiece. 1Password has 0 trackers. And I'm in this mindset, Forrest, where I think password managers, these independent apps like these, they're a dying breed, and I'm probably in the rare camp here. But now that there's a lot more competition out there to try to manage your passwords, and where you see that the most for us is in the browser wars, where you can have Google manage your password, or you have Safari Keychain, which can manage your password. I'm sorry, Apple's Keychain inside Safari. And then, of course, Microsoft has their own authenticator, and their authenticator can also store passwords, which I started using this past week to try to figure that out. So there's a lot of options out there, and this story, as the cyber world burns and we learn more about these trackers and what they're doing, there's going to be a lot of shifting in this market space. So just be aware of it, and it's something to keep on your news. What do you think, Forrest? We talk about Alexa?
This privacy rabbit hole.
Man, do you trust? I don't trust. I just realized I have severe trust issues with a lot of these devices too in my home. Alexa especially. Hey Alexa, make these people leave my house. Alexa says, playing Nickelback. I love that meme. But why would you trust Alexa? And what's going on with them folks is there's a lot of privacy policy issues around the so-called skills app. You have, if you've ever used Alexa before, you have all these skills, and you can basically have Alexa do different things for you. But most of these skills they don't have a privacy policy. And what these researchers were able to do was look at 90,000 Alexa skills and then test the process for themselves to see how secure some of these skills are. And they found some unique stuff in their experiments, and we thought we'd take a quick moment to talk about some of that craziness.
It's pretty ugly when you start digging into it. There's I wish I had grabbed the actual numbers, but there were a lot of skills related to like health information. And I think they were doing a little bit better. They had about 40% or so had a privacy policy associated with it. But what was really scary was their ability to go in and register a developer account using whatever name they wanted. There was
anything. You pick anything, any name you want.
Like, I am now Microsoft. Like, okay, cool. Like, and then there didn't seem to be very much oversight into what actually happened. Sure, they may do like an initial review when you submit it, but subsequent updates didn't undergo the same scrutinization. So you could get something published and get the stamp of approval, but then at that point it's Wild West, do whatever you want, and it's pretty terrifying. I see a lot of parallels here to their just the regular Amazon marketplace, where you'll have things where there will be products that are changing. It's funny, you look through reviews for a product, and suddenly people have posted pictures of a completely different product, but they've gone through and changed the description and the pictures, and now it's a completely different product. So it was a high quality item that got great reviews, and then they pull this old switcheroo, and now they're selling trash, and there's no recourse for you.
How dare they? How dare they? Now, Forrest, Amazon does have this certification process. You kind of touched on it a little bit. For any of these skills, they have to go through a certification process. But what's interesting is there's no restriction imposed on if you change the back-end code after certification. You can change it anytime you want. And then not only that, but then you mentioned you can pick any company name that you want. So if you want to call yourself Daffy Duck Enterprises and put out what you think is a quality skill set, and then come behind the scenes, change the code, you could potentially pull that off. So what I thought was interesting too is some of the news media went and asked Amazon about this, and they said, hey, are you aware of these security researcher findings? And Amazon gave like the standard cut and paste response, which is, yeah, there's no problems. We've got a process in place and it works very well. And then at the very last line of the response from Amazon, it was something like, well, maybe we do have some work to do to try to get this under control. So again, folks, just be aware of it. These Alexa things and all these devices, it's always fun to have them in your home sometimes. But then when you actually look at the privacy policy, or you realize that maybe things are not what they seem to be on the surface, you may want to think about turning them off for a little bit. So, all right, Forrest, we got to switch gears too. We got to talk about the WandaVision attack. And that's what I'm calling it, man, because it reminds me so much of the movie, the TV show WandaVision, where you've got this fake world and people are being tricked through search engine optimization into this fake world, Forrest. It's wild, man. This SEO stuff absolutely really just blows my mind.
Yeah, so small confession, I have not seen any of WandaVision, so
this podcast is over then, man. This podcast is over.
Well, it's been a good run, thanks.
Well, I think if we tried to explain it to the folks, and trying to explain how many servers the threat actors are using, they're using this thing called the Goot loader technique, and they're basically they're tampering with your content management system of your websites. And then from there, it gets a little nutty, just to say the least.
Yeah. This whole thing is pretty fascinating. The world of like malicious search engine optimization is very intriguing. I would love to learn more about how it works when you get into it. Just some pretty cool stuff happening to get these results in front of people.
And really, as we understand it, the exploits, there's about 400 servers allegedly being used. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to compromise the CMS, which runs the back end of a lot of these websites, just using some very, very short lines of code. And then what you're able to do then is when somebody puts in a search request or they're trying to get a specific search query answered, the user gets sent to like a fake message board. And this is where the WandaVision connection comes in. If you've ever seen the TV show, where there's a fake world and you are then dumped into this fake chat room and you think you're talking with a real person. The example that Sophos did, and Sophos is the one that spent a lot of time on the research, is, hey, I'm trying to, the user gets put into this fake message board room. I'm trying to get help with my house and some paperwork. And then this admin bot responds, oh, I got a link for you to click on, and that will get you your paperwork that you need for your house to get your question answered about your house. And that is where the real craziness happens, because from there, once you click on that link, and if you're not aware that you're in a fake message board and a website that looks very much like the real website, you can get screwed pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that they're taking your exact search query that you're looking for and then just basically copy pasting that straight in. And so it's a forum post asking whatever your exact question is, especially if you are posing searches as questions. How do I do X? Then the very first post is somebody asking, how do I do X? And then immediately is, here's a direct link download for the file that you need. And it's like, oh, cool, I can get whatever document I needed directly that way. And the whole thing, it's hard to train users to spot this sort of stuff. There's very subtle kind of clues to pick up on. Mostly it's going to be like the context or phrasing of it, making sure that there's no weird grammatical things. It's very tricky, and so essentially, you have users that are clicking on this, expecting this zip file to contain some document, and in reality, it's actually JavaScript executing. and doing some nastiness that way. So I see this as kind of a bigger trend of things. I'm not sure if they're abusing like the predictive search queries, if they're just feeding in keywords, kind of this word salad into their page content, and then trying to trigger based off of the most popular search autocomplete phrases or what. But you start to see this also with other sites that are doing something similar, where they'll scrape like entire Reddit threads and drive traffic to their site that way. So it's funny because I occasionally I will search up try and find my own kind of footprints online, and I see results coming up for domains that I've never heard of, and it's like definitely something that I posted, like direct wording, and I look at it and it's just a direct scrape of some forum or Reddit or something. And it's pretty crazy how widespread this stuff is becoming.
And it's like you said, it's so hard to detect. It's so hard to educate people on. This is definitely going to be one of those topics in the news that just keeps climbing up the ladder, and you're going to hear more and more about this stuff. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about the SolarWinds circus, because that circus doesn't stop. It's rolling back into town. Every week there's some kind of crazy story about the SolarWinds breach. And I don't know about you, but man, it's like one of those TV shows where I can't get enough of the drama every week. And it's such a sad story, man. And it just keeps getting sadder.
Yeah, it's just insult to injury at this point, and it just keeps getting worse. I just can't help but just shake my head, and like I do try and exercise some level of empathy, but this former CEO statements just make me facepalm so hard. Oh man.
Forrest, he's blaming the interns now. I mean, yeah, there's some truth to that, but let's be real. You own that, buddy. It's on your watch. The SolarWinds CEO is blaming the intern for the SolarWinds 123 password leak. Yeah, you can't, man. You gotta own that, guys.
Oh, it hurts so much. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with this. Like, first of all, like, yeah, throwing the intern under the bus, like that just first and foremost indicates maybe that's a company culture that I wouldn't want to be part of anyway. Like, that's just reputation damage. Like, come on, man. Dude. Like, yeah, sure, the intern may have done it, but that then begs the question, like, why does that intern have the ability to do something, that is just that much fail? Like, was there no oversight? Like, what processes do you have in place to make sure that intern wasn't out and out malicious?
Forrest, bigger than that though. I mean, you're talking about role-based access control. What kind of access control are you giving the intern? If I want to be an intern, I might want to go there, because who knows what access controls they're going to give me. I might have control of the whole company as an intern. My gosh, man.
Yeah. It's I mean, how yeah, so the entire process, like, okay, so this intern, decides to choose SolarWinds 123 as the password. Okay, one, yeah, was there any oversight? Two, if there was oversight, how many people saw that and were like, you know what, that's okay, we'll just let that roll. If it's not out and out aiding and abetting, it's at least being complicit in it. Or there's also the other, the flip side. They're just trying to push something out super quick. They said, okay, this is a temp placeholder, we'll put a to do here, we're going to come back to this, we will fix this in time, and then just never get the dev cycles to do it. Or what, or, maybe it's there's just a massive bureaucracy where, oh, we can't do this sprint, that's kick that down the road.
But if that intern left the company and this password was still active, imagine what the lawyers are going to have when this gets to that class action lawsuit that's going to happen. This is going to be one of the key points that they're going to keep pivoting on. And Forrest, Representative Katie Porter came out. She had the best quote of the day. All right. I've got a stronger password than SolarWinds 123 to stop my kids from watching too much YouTube on their iPad. Like that alone, man. You know, if the representatives are coming out and putting out statements like that, you know they're going to be really all over this by the time it hits the class actions. So
Yeah, they're definitely not pulling any punches because, I mean, just the sheer scale of the impact and the fallout. I mean, oh, there's got to be some kind of, molly guard in place. This was I don't know if you're familiar with the concept. Um, it's when you see those little covers over the switch, you see this a lot in like aircraft or other places where it's like if accidentally flip something can go very wrong very quickly. There
big
there
time.
needs to be those physical controls in place. Similar things need to happen with these digital systems where for instance, you SSH into a machine and you're like, okay, reboot, and all of a sudden your system's down and it's like, oh crap, that wasn't the machine that I thought it was.
Dope.
Having some like conscious to a like, are you sure you want to do this kind of thing? I think a lot more of those kind of controls need to be put in place because frankly, like everybody in the industry was a newbie at some point. Like nobody just comes out and is, some computer science, absolute super genius that never does any wrong. Like everybody makes mistakes. We're all people. People suck. Like, sorry, but it comes with the territory. And I think designing things in such a way that accounts for that human element of like, okay, somebody is going to mess up at some point. How can we catch this? Well, you can do things like red teaming where, people are generating a corpus of passwords based off of, company names or departments or product names or things like that, and using that as part of like brute force password generation. Like there's controls that definitely could catch these things. And also, it could just fall back to making sure that security is actually a priority and not, oh, we'll get to it later.
And that's boy, Forrest, this SolarWinds attack, when you have Defense Department emails being leaked, that's where I really start to draw the line and go, why didn't this company have more technical controls? Why didn't you have more governance controls? When you're being entrusted with this level and you have this happen on your watch, there's no excuses. And that's what really bothers me about this circus that keeps happening and this former CEO. I just want to tell him to go, shut up. Just shut up and walk away and wait for the lawsuit to be knocked on your front door because it's coming, buddy. Forrest, we got to switch gears. We got to talk about being brave. Are you brave, Forrest?
I am very brave.
How brave are you? Because Tor, we got to talk about these service requests being leaked through DNS for a moment.
Yeah. So Brave, I will admit I do use Brave as a fallback in the event that I have to use some website where web developers are somehow stuck in the aughts and never learned about the browser wars. Slight jab there, but that is a rabbit hole that I could rant on for hours on end. Anyways,
Forrest, but you got also, you're fanatical. I mean, the folks that are in these browser wars like yourself, you're on the front line, buddy. You're fanatical about browser wars, man. Can you tell the audience about understanding some of this stuff, this leaking of these DNS requests? Because stuff, man, the guy that found it, the researcher that found it, was really getting some crazy pushback on the web. People just throwing him under the bus, like, how dare you go after Brave?
And it's nutty. Like, oh man. First, let's start off with what the flaw was. So Brave has the ability to use Tor in private browsing tabs. So you can have these tabs that use Tor for the routing, so that you get that layer of obfuscation and anonymity, so that you can have additional privacy in that sense, where whatever site you're visiting doesn't know what IP you're coming from, which is great, grand, awesome, wonderful. Like I love Tor. I'm a huge privacy advocate in that regard. I use Tor regularly myself. The problem was that the way that Brave implemented it, they have some checks in place for ad blocking, because that's like the selling point of Brave is the integrated ad blocking, and their ad blocking was implemented in such a way that it was forwarding on DNS requests for .onion domains. So if you were visiting an Onion hidden service, it would check that that DNS request against the upstream DNS provider, which for a lot of people is their internet service provider, or they may have like a centralized DNS server, things like that. So wherever you're, whoever you're using for your DNS was seeing what Onion site you were trying to access, which is just an absolute nightmare from an operational security standpoint. If your privacy is something that if it were compromised could have major consequences for you, this is a nightmare scenario for you. And I applaud the effort to try and bring Tor to a broader audience, and to help normalize these privacy protecting technologies, just because, surveillance capitalism is so pervasive these days. But the problem comes in these kind of foot guns where they have the best intentions, but they just end up falling flat on their face. And it's funny because the execution is critical. Gosh, I'm stuttering so much.
You're so emotional, Forrest, over this, man.
Dude, I get worked up about these things, dude. I don't even know, or Brave themselves, like in their documentation, specifically say like, hey, if your privacy is that critical, you should be using Tor browser, which is, it's, to me, it kind of speaks volumes that it's like they have this feature, but it's not given the same level of scrutiny that the Tor project at large gets. So I
know. I got to calm you down, Forrest. I got to take you off the. Have a drink of coffee, all right, man. And we'll come back to this. We'll talk about this offline, Forrest, because I know we may need to get you therapy after this. All right. All right, we got to switch gears. We got a little bit more time to go here, and we want to cover some really important stuff going on. Ryuk ransomware, it's self-spreading now. There's a new variant of it out there, and Ryuk, it's interesting the way this propagates itself, going from machine to machine, from Windows domains to Windows domains. And what happens is after it launches this new variant now, it can really spread itself on every reachable machine that anything can be accessed. So you really have to understand that as we understand it, all the IP addresses in the local ARP cache is then sent what looks like to you awake on LAN packets, and then that's sent to the discovered devices. So what it can do from there is some really unique damage in that it can mount itself to any shared resource. And that's where the uniqueness comes from, the ability to copy itself. So there are some lessons learned from this, and it's just being it or having it on your radar is important. If you can change the password of the privileged domain, that's one lesson learned you can take away from this. And then also, if you can proceed to some sort of double Kerberos ticket domain password change, that's important too. So what did I miss on this one, Forrest? Because these variants, they're just going to keep happening. And the bottom line is you got to know these different variants. You got to know how they execute in your environment. And then you got to be able to look for some of the warning signs that come with it.
Yeah. It's where some of these malware are able to get those domain admin credentials and then pivot throughout the environment is really difficult, because a lot of the functionality of operating in a domain environment does require that ability. So it makes it very tricky. The whole wake on LAN thing I thought was particularly clever, just because getting hosts to respond to you and come up just so you can try and maximize the spread is a pretty interesting approach. And I mean, above all, Kerberos is hard.
Right, right.
I remember trying to learn the model when I was studying for my CISSP, and man, that was talk about complexity.
I'll tell you, you know who makes it easy to learn Kerberos was Kelly Handerhan. She used to work at Cybery. She's got a video out called the Kerberos Carnival, and she uses the carnival model. Like you go and you get your ticket, and then you go on your ride. You go on the printer ride, and then you got to get more ticket. It's such a good way of explaining it. You can Google that, folks, on YouTube. She put her video up, a 10-minute video on explaining Kerberos using the circus model. So let's switch gears again, Forrest. Talos, who did a fantastic job of trying to understand this mass logger campaign, and they use the beaver as the. I love sometimes how they pick these researchers. They pick some sort of diagram or image, and they use the beaver for the mass logger campaign. It's a malware campaign. What makes it unique is it's fileless. So because what it's able to do then is essentially compile the HTML format, and that starts the infection chain. So there's a lot of multi stages to this fileless attack scheme. But it's been impacting people that use Discord, Outlook. If you use any of the major web browsers out there, or NordVPN, even if you're a NordVPN user, you need to be aware of it. So there is some good news regarding this malware. I can't believe I'm even saying that, Forrest. There's good news. We have good news about this malware.
Good news, everyone.
But the malware initiates the attack from within the system memory. So the payload, to deliver that payload, it really requires some tried and true phishing emails. So you have to be able to click on the right phishing email in order to activate this type of malware. So interesting stuff. It is in the news. We've included the links in the presentation. You guys can learn more. Yeah. And Forrest, when I initially heard, we're going to talk about Akamai for a moment, and CIS, the Center for Internet Security. When I heard this story, Forrest, I got really upset, and I'll explain it to everyone really quickly here. But the Center for Internet Security is offering free ransomware protection for hospitals, and that in itself is like, yes, we need to help our hospital folks out there. And then as I understand it, you had to actually switch your DNS provider over to Akamai's DNS server, and then I'm like, oh. It's like a bait and switch, but you actually dived into this, and you learned a little bit more than I actually knew about it. So I get this free ransomware protection for my hospital, but I got to switch over to Akamai's DNS server. But there's more to the story, right, Forrest?
Yeah. So I mean, it seems like a very minimal lift, very quick to implementation kind of measure. If you don't have any kind of DNS protection in place currently through like Cisco Umbrella or something else, then I mean, this is operating on a very similar kind of approach. So it's apparently it's already blocked some comms with known C2 domains. So there's already been some success derived from this. Where it did seem a little like a little dirty was the whole, you have to use Akamai's DNS for this, which just to me screams that at that point you are the product. But apparently they're implementing this. They were able to do it through the multi-state information sharing and analysis centers. So this is actually being funded by DHS's cybersecurity infrastructure security agency, CISA. So they're the source of the funding. They're the ones that are actually paying for this program. And it's right now it's just kind of a pilot. I believe there was additional funding that was being provided by the Center for Internet Security to the tune of like $1 million or something, because operating DNS infrastructure and keeping those drop lists of domains up to date does take some overhead. So that's where the funding is coming from is essentially from DHS and CIS. So it kind of answers that question of, oh well, where are you getting the money to do this sort of thing? So unless you are the product and this is a service that is actually bought and paid for by somebody, but they're operating it through the rest of the year, through 2021 as a pilot. So potentially this could get dropped at the end of the year if they don't see like widespread adoption, or they don't think it's effective enough. Who knows? That remains to be seen. But if they do decide to keep it on, they're going to try and secure long-term funding for it, which at that point, you may need to reevaluate. Maybe it does go to more of a data mining kind of model.
Yeah.
The other aspect is they are logging the DNS requests that are being made. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. My dog's squeaking and chirping in the background, but
no dog. We're a pet friendly show, so your cats and dogs are encouraged to learn about cybersecurity to help protect your home. So, there's some good value in this program, and initially. The initial stuff that I read, it didn't feel like there was value in it, other than when you see the word free, it's like, I'm going to jump on it. And then when you dived into it like you did, which is very helpful. So the audience is encouraged to learn more. And I think that's important about understanding this free program.
Yeah, they're logging the DNS request for 30 days, and then they provide weekly reporting. So it doesn't seem like they're doing a lot as far as trying to data mine that information, but who knows? That I would want to look into Akamai's privacy policy a little more closely if I were a hospital looking to implement this. And eventually, I do want to spin up my own recursive DNS resolver and get some, those block lists on my own. But not everybody wants to be their own DNS admin. So, this may be an easy way to, if you're short on manpower, could be an easy lift for you.
All right, Forrest, it's time for breaches. Breaches in the news. Give me all your cash. Give me all your cash, Forrest. CACHE. We're going to very quickly go through some of the breaches that happened in the past week or so. There's a lot going on. The big one that caught my eye was Kia, $20 million doppelpaymer ransomware gang at it. I have to laugh, though, when I read the press release, Forrest. Kia said, nothing to see here, at this time. And I actually thought their press release was the right way to say a ransomware press release. And I actually underlined it and highlighted it for the team. At this time, and based on the best and most current information, we can confirm that we have no evidence that Kia or any Kia data is subject to a ransomware attack. That's the perfect response, because your IR team, your incident response team, is trying to investigate. You don't have all the facts. You're still trying to dive into it. The news people would give you a different story, that they were actually targeted and hit. And if you actually, dive into some of the dealerships said, yeah, and we don't have any proof to back this up, but they said there's a $20 million Bitcoin ransomware demand being made. Otherwise, the data gets leaked online. Kia's saying, no, there's no attack. We did have some acknowledgement of an outage. Some customers were left without heating. It reminds me so much of like that movie Jaws, man, where it's like, we did have some bathers on the beach that were injured, but they're okay to go back in the ocean. Everything's fine. We will keep the beaches open. We will keep the Kia dealerships open, Forrest.
Yeah. It's interesting because supposedly Hyundai had an outage about the same time, and Hyundai now owns Kia. But it's interesting that they both had outages. And the whole confirmation or lack thereof basically makes it boil down at this point to, he said, she said, or maybe just a game of telephone. This is what I heard in the grapevine. So I guess, time will tell. At some point, we'll find out whether it actually was ransomware or not. But until then, we're just kind of left shrugging our shoulders. What's worrisome about this to me is, how it impacted customers' cars. The ability to remotely turn on their heating and things like that. You had something similar with Nissan a few years back, where their car functionality app. Gosh, I can't even remember what it was called.
Yeah, I don't remember either, man. But yeah, I know what you're referring to.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and the only authentication they had in place for that was the VIN, and people could remotely disable or enable car charging if you had a leaf, or turn on the heat, or these different things. Start the remote start. I really don't want my car connected to the internet like that. That just is that's a bridge too far for me. I'm not. I really am not cool with this fascination for all things connected at all times.
And on the opposite side, my wife does not mind. We're cool with it. She wants to have everything connected. I say, hold on, trust but verify. Do I trust this vendor? Give me. I always say to my wife, if you want this device in the home or you want something connected on the web, give me a week to do a threat risk assessment. And my wife's like, huh? What? I go, no, just let me do a threat risk assessment on everything in our home, right? And then after I do the threat risk assessment, my wife's like, okay, you're telling me this is this problem and then all right, we don't need to have it connected. So it's a good breach to understand. It's a good response, a good lesson learned. This Kia breach on how to properly respond. But there's other breaches in the news, Forrest, and we should talk about the Underwriters Laboratories, the UL. So if anybody has ever looked at the back of any of their electronic devices, you usually see a little thing that says UL listed. Well, they got breached. Ransomware, what the press release, and again, another lesson learned here, guys. UL detected unusual activity on its systems on this date. We took immediate precautions. We're engaging firms. We're restoring from backups. We're not here to speculate. I mean, that is one of the best press releases too. Like, who wrote this? It could have been an Emmy Academy Award winning press release for UL. That's how good it was, Forrest.
Yeah, it's more of the same in the ransom world thing. Again, concerns about potential double extortion. They're saying they won't pay the ransom.
Yep.
It's lather, rinse, repeat as far as ransomware goes. It's more of breach du jour.
And there's other breaches too. So let's talk about VPN. If you use the VPN of Gecko, VPN, Super VPN, Chat VPN, oh, Forrest, remember that old commercial? Calgon, take me away. That's what I felt like every time we hear these VPNs being breached. But this one is particularly nasty in that 21 million user records, a lot of sensitive details, including authentication credentials. And what these researchers were able to find was snippets from the database of these leaks contained users' devices, and that kind of stuff, Forrest. When you read the privacy policies of some of these VPN providers, they say we're not collecting any of this kind of stuff. But the reality is the database got leaked, and we find out that's not always the case.
Yeah. It's a matter of, you can operate off of what a privacy policy says, and oftentimes, unless you're going in and reverse engineering it, or anything like that, you can't really see what it is that they're actually collecting. So there's a lot to be said here, as far as overly broad permissions, or using reputable, trustworthy companies that have been audited, or open source solutions, or just the amount of information that an organization has on you to begin with. It's ultimately, VPNs are trying to fulfill a need for people who want privacy, and I think that there are legitimate concerns there, especially in the past, where you've seen a lot of internet service providers that do a lot of tampering with people's internet connections, throttling of things, injecting advertisements for DNS records that don't exist, just all kinds of weird, scummy, underhanded stuff that just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So I do understand, why people want to use VPNs, and I use a VPN myself. And a lot of it comes down to, if you can use Tor, like that's what I'm gonna hop on that soapbox. But there's other options. There's you can get a VPS for like $5 a month, where you just spin up a droplet on DigitalOcean or Google Cloud or whatever platform of your choice, and then you could use something like Streisand, that you can spin up your own VPN server if you're feeling particularly tech savvy in that regard, or you can just be really, really picky with what VPN you choose. If I didn't already have a VPN provider, I would probably try and choose one that's going to have the least amount of information on me as possible. One in particular is Molvad. I believe they're German or Scandinavian country of some sort. Anyway, you can actually pay them through with cash by mail, and the only information they have about you is your account number that they generate for you when you sign up. So just kind of having that separation of like, I'm only going to give you this small snippet of information. It's a pretty interesting approach.
So we got a few minutes left here, and I will say that everyone's VPN needs are so different. My VPN needs are more based around throttling of my VPN from my ISP, which is probably a unique aspect in the amount of work that I do, from video editing and so on. So, but we got other breaches in the news. There's a lot of breaches going on, but we don't have time to talk about all of them. But we do need to highlight the Gabba Gabba Hey, Gabba Gabba Ho, Gabba Gabba Hey, because Gab got breached, 70 gigabytes of data. Oh my gosh, 15,000 Gab users involved in this. All the big names, representatives like that MyPillow dude, Mike Lindell, Alex Jones was on Gab, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Trump was on Gab as well, and all of this stuff got leaked. What I found interesting, Forrest, about this particular leak was the CEO. He initially came out and said something like, "Nothing to see here, we were not breached whatsoever." And then very quickly by Sunday, the CEO said, "We've got mentally ill hackers. We've got demon hackers." Like the names, the way he would describe the hacker was so visually enticing for me, calling them demons and mentally ill. And unfortunately, for the people that use Gab, yeah, your stuff's out there now. And a lot of people have this misconception for us that platforms like Gab and Parler are more secure because they're not through an app, that they're actually, you just go right to the website and go from there, and you're using your browser to use apps like, to use Gab or Parler. And that's not always the case.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. They back in the day, they had to try and address this deplatforming issue. They decided, oh well, we're going to use something that's federated, decentralized. So they took Mastodon and forked it, and then they ended up making it way more insecure by adding in this commit that allowed for SQL injection to take place. And so it's there's a lot of that in and of itself was pretty problematic. Like, when are they not actually doing any security reviews when they commit code? Do they not have any kind of static analysis tool that's running against those things? Because that would have been, a SQL injection is something that static analysis generally catches pretty easily. And then the response for them to go through, they actually ended up going back and deleting all the commits from their Git repository, and then just uploading everything with a zip file. Some of the discussion that I was reading was saying that they could have possibly violated the terms of the AGPL by doing that, by not providing those code commits. So it seems like just the response to all this could actually end up making things worse for them, and it's just a messy situation all around.
I got to tell you, Forrest, before we get off this subject of Gab, I've got a lot of friends, non-technical friends, and they all say, it's all about free speech. It's about free speech. And I said, no, it is. I get that piece of the equation. But what you don't understand is a lot of these decentralized, these platform, this stuff like Gab and Parler, guys, there may not be as secure. And trying to get that point across with my non-technical friends is very much of a challenge. And you're going to keep seeing this kind of stuff with platforms like Parler and Gab because of some of these security reviews and these code review issues that are not being resolved by the developer. It's time for the mystery grab bag. All the odds and ends, the mystery grab bag. Yes, this is the stories that they kind of wrap up the show with, and we found fascinating. HBO, they interviewed Kevin Mandia. You may recognize that name. He's a bigwig in our industry. Kevin Mandia, founder of Mandiant, FireEye. Well, I loved his analogies, Forrest. And if you're a fan of the movie Slapshot, you ever seen the movie Slapshot?
I haven't actually. I need to check it out.
Forrest, you've never seen the movie Slapshot? The Hanson brothers, man. Oh my gosh. Put that on your radar, all right? So Kevin Mandiant says, quote, "We're in an environment right now where we're playing goalie, and there's slap shots coming at us every millisecond. And by the way, blocking 99.99999% of the attacks means you're going to get compromised everywhere." And I love the analogy. The way Kevin presented himself in this HBO interview, we're going to include the link so you can watch the interview. It's really fascinating stuff. Some other quotes that I picked out from the HBO interview I thought were important. He said the next conflict, the gloves are going to come off in cyber. The next conflict, every American citizen will be dragged into it, whether they want to or not. And this was like my Ghostbusters moment, right? Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, apps won't work, appliances may not work, people don't know all the things they depend on. All of a sudden, supply chain disrupted. We're already seeing that. The problem is nobody knows what the rules are. And Forrest, this is what caught my attention. There's no rules of engagement, folks, when it comes to cybersecurity, and there's no written documentation on what the rules are and what the response should look like. And we see that right now with SolarWinds attack, where a lot of the attribution is back into the Russian folks, and yet there's no recourse. We're not doing anything to combat all these massive cyber attacks. And then Kevin went on to say, "I don't know if you will get people to agree to the rules on espionage because of the asymmetry where most countries can't beat us with tanks. They can't beat us with airplanes. But in cyber, maybe that's where they can make investments and they can beat us." And that, my friends, is the key takeaway of that interview, where if we don't get our act together as a country, man, we are in some serious doo-doo. And we're talking about our cyber infrastructure that looks like duct tape and barbed wire and chicken fencing put together, right? We've got to get ourselves a plan of attack and rules of engagement in place. So that article caught my attention. And then the last article we need to talk about is MIT Technology Review. With MIT, you only get 3 free articles a year. And they put out a great article about understanding how hackers get inside the Apple's walled garden. And as you know, Apple's phones are locked down pretty extensively. But what the article went on to say is highlight some use cases of how these hackers are able to hide in some of the memory and some of the data points inside some of the phones. So you've got to be aware of it that Apple is they're trying to invest millions to try to raise that wall of their walled garden. But what the hackers are doing behind the scenes is they're investing millions of their own to buy and develop zero-day exploits that allow them to take over your iPhone invisibly.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, the whole exploit development arms race, especially in the mobile space. You start seeing some really high price tags. I looked at, for example, Zerodium. They have their exploit purchase program. You can see they've got a table where they'll lay out what they pay out for the different exploits. For a full chain exploit with persistence on an iOS device, I think they're paying out $2 million for that. So it's a pretty penny. And then you get like 2.5 million for the same capabilities on Android. There's just massive amounts of money being thrown at this stuff. And then what they do, who they then turn around and sell that to, or how they leverage it, it's pretty scary stuff. There's how do you defend against these multi-million dollar incentives to attack you? I don't know, man. It sucks. I'm gonna quit InfoSec and become a potato farmer.
Well, potato farming, you make good money in that too. So I do want to highlight that again. You get 2 or 3 free articles with the MIT Technology Review, and this is the one article that I thought was worth clicking on and understanding. They explain some of the attack systems that are used. They also spend a little bit of time about how you can defend against it and setting up tripwires. And they talk about this iVerify app, which I've actually used before in the past. iVerify is one of the rare, unique apps that was actually approved by Apple. It's a security app. It allows you to peer inside your iPhone. It allows you to look for security anomalies, and I thought it was a pretty cool article. And it's good insights, trying to understand how this walled garden stuff works. And on that note, we got to wrap up the show. We'd love for you to subscribe. Check us out on YouTube. If you subscribe, we get 5,000 subscribers. I will whip out the Chris Farley impersonation. I promise you it'll be a great impersonation. You won't be disappointed. On behalf of Forrest and SecurityMetrics and the entire team here in the Silicon Slopes, thank you for joining us. Have a good one.